My in-laws refused to come to our wedding because I was beneath their standards, then demanded we pay for their medical expenses. The irony wasn't lost on me when my mother-in-law called 5 years later, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Darling, we need to discuss something important. Your father-in-law needs bypass surgery." I'd met Quentin at a community college where I was working 2 jobs to pay tuition. He came from old money, the kind where your great-grandfather's name is on hospital wings. His parents took one look at my thrift store clothes and serving job and decided I was a gold digger. They threatened to cut him off completely if he married me. He chose me anyway. The wedding was small. My parents, my brother, and a handful of friends. Quentin's side of the church sat empty. His mother sent a card that simply read, "You'll regret this. We built our life without them. No trust fund, no safety net, just 2 people working their way up." I finished my degree while waitressing nights. Quentin started at entry level despite his engineering degree because his father refused to make any calls. We bought a tiny house, had 2 kids, lived paycheck to paycheck, but we were happy. His parents sent nothing. No birthday cards for the children, no Christmas gifts, radio silence for 5 years. Then came the phone call. "The surgery costs $180,000, my mother-in-law explained. "Insurance only covers $90,000. We've always lived beyond our means, and well, we're a bit short." She said it like she was asking to borrow sugar. My father-in-law had spent decades collecting vintage cars and taking European vacations. They'd remodeled their house twice in 5 years. "We're family," she continued. "Surely you can help during this difficult time." The same woman who'd told Quentin I'd trap him with a pregnancy, who'd hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on my family, who'd called me trailer trash at a charity gala she didn't know I was catering. I asked how much they needed. $45,000 would cover it, she said. That was our entire savings. Every penny we'd scraped together for our kids' college fund, money I'd earned working doubles while pregnant, money Quentin had saved by walking to work for 3 years. "I need to discuss this with Quentin," I said. "Of course, dear," she replied, her tone suggesting it was already decided. That night, Quentin and I sat at our kitchen table, the same one we'd bought at a yard sale. "They're your parents," I said carefully. He stared at his hands. "They disowned me, told me I was dead to them. Now they want our children's future." We decided to visit them, see his father before making any decisions. Their house looked the same, massive, immaculate. A maid answered the door. We walked past rooms filled with antiques and original artwork. My father-in-law sat in his study, looking frail but still managing to radiate disapproval. "Son," he said, not looking at me, "I assume your wife explained our situation?" "She did," Quentin replied, "and we've made a decision." My mother-in-law entered, her eyes landing on me with barely concealed disgust. "We'll help," Quentin continued. His mother's face lit up. "Under one condition." The room went silent. "What condition?" his father asked. Quentin pulled out his phone, opening his banking app. "You apologize to my wife for everything, and you meet your grandchildren." His mother's face turned crimson. "We're not apologizing to her." "Then we're done here," Quentin said, standing. His father struggled to his feet. "You'd let me die over your pride? You were willing to lose your son over yours," I said quietly. My father-in-law's face went purple. "How dare you?" "We're leaving," Quentin interrupted. As we reached the door, his mother shrieked, "We'll sue you." "Good luck," I called back. 2 days later, a process server appeared. They were suing for grandparents' rights and financial elder support, demanding $200,000. Our lawyer went pale reading the paperwork. "There's something you need to know," he said slowly. "Your father-in-law changed his will 6 months ago." I sat forward. "Changed it how?" Our lawyer, Edmund, slid the document across his desk. "He left everything to a charitable foundation. Every asset. The house, the cars, the investment portfolio, everything." Quentin blinked. "I don't understand. Why does that matter?" "Because," Edmund explained, "he's claiming he had to disinherit you due to your financial irresponsibility and poor life choices. He's using that as evidence that you're unfit to manage elder care funds, while simultaneously arguing that as his only child, you're legally obligated to support him." "That's insane," I said. "We've never asked them for anything." "It gets worse." Edmund pulled out another document. "They're claiming that your refusal to provide financial support constitutes elder abuse. They're asking the court to force you to pay for his medical care, plus damages for emotional distress." I felt sick. Can they do that? In this state, there are filial responsibility laws. Adult children can be held financially responsible for their parents' care if the parents are deemed indigent, but your in-laws aren't indigent. They have assets. "Had assets," Quentin corrected bitterly. "Apparently they gave it all away." Edmund nodded. "That's the genius of it. They're trying to make themselves judgment-proof while forcing you to cover their expenses. If they win, you'd be paying their bills while a charity gets their estate." I thought about our kids. Nora was 7, Henry was 5. They had no idea their grandparents even existed. We'd shown them photos once, explained that some families weren't close. They'd accepted it with the simple logic of children and moved on. "What do we do?" I asked. "We fight," Edmund said. "But I need to be honest. This could get expensive. Court costs, depositions, expert witnesses. We're looking at $30,000 minimum, possibly more." The number hit me like a punch. That was 2/3 of our savings, the money we'd been so careful to protect. "We'll do it," Quentin said firmly. "We're not letting them manipulate us." The next 3 months were a nightmare. Depositions where my mother-in-law sat across from me, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, painting herself as a devoted mother abandoned by her ungrateful son. My father-in-law's lawyer was a shark named Patterson, who made it his mission to destroy us. "Mrs. Ashford," he said during my deposition, his voice dripping with false sympathy, "isn't it true that you've harbored resentment toward your in-laws since before your marriage?" "I harbored resentment toward people who called me trailer trash," I replied evenly. "Objection," Edmund said. "Relevance." Patterson smiled. I'm establishing a pattern of hostility. Mrs. Ashford, did you or did you not encourage your husband to cut off contact with his parents? They cut off contact with us. They refused to attend our wedding because you rushed into marriage, correct? While my client was concerned his son was making a hasty decision, we dated for 3 years before getting engaged, and yet you married within months of the engagement. Almost as if you were in a hurry. I saw where he was going. I wasn't pregnant, if that's what you're implying. But you did have children relatively quickly after marriage, didn't you? Edmund slammed his folder down. This is harassment. My client's reproductive timeline is not relevant to elder support obligations. The deposition went on for 4 hours. They asked about every financial decision Quentin and I had ever made, the car we drove, our grocery budget, whether we'd taken vacations. They were building a case that we could afford to help but simply refused out of spite. That evening, I came home to find Quentin at the kitchen table, surrounded by documents. What are you doing? I asked. Building our defense. He looked exhausted. I'm documenting every time they chose their lifestyle over family, every vacation they took while refusing to acknowledge our kids, every penny they spent on themselves. I sat down beside him. Edmund said the judge won't care about the emotional stuff, just whether they're truly indigent and whether we can pay. Then we show them they're not indigent. He pulled out a spreadsheet. Dad's 1957 Ferrari sold at auction 2 months ago for $850,000. That money went somewhere. I stared at the screen. Where? That's what I'm trying to find out. He clicked through tabs. He's been liquidating assets for the past year. The cars, some property, stocks, everything went to this foundation. The one in the will? No, a different one. The Whitmore Family Foundation. He turned the laptop toward me. It was established 8 months ago. Want to guess who the board members are? I scanned the list. My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and 3 names I didn't recognize. Who are the others? I asked. That's what gets interesting. Quentin pulled up another window. They're lawyers, estate planning specialists. This whole thing was orchestrated. For what purpose? I think they're hiding assets. They dump everything into this foundation, claim they're broke, force us to pay for Dad's care, then live off the foundation's charitable disbursements. It was so calculated it took my breath away. That can't be legal. It's in a gray area. Foundations have to give away a certain percentage annually, but the board members can receive reasonable compensation for their work. Plus, they can authorize grants for things like medical care, so they get their surgery paid for twice. Once by us, once by the foundation they control. Exactly. Quentin's jaw tightened. And when Dad dies, Mom gets to live in the foundation-owned property, use foundation-owned cars, all while claiming she has no personal assets. I thought about the maid who'd answered their door, the fresh flowers in every room, the remodeled kitchen. They're living in that house right now. How is that not an asset? The foundation owns it. They're just residing in a property the foundation maintains. He laughed bitterly. It's brilliant, really. Evil, but brilliant. We brought all of this to Edmund the next day. He read through Quentin's research, his expression growing darker. This is good, he said finally. Really good. If we can prove they're fraudulently claiming indigence, the whole case falls apart. How do we prove it? I asked. We subpoena the foundation's financial records, force them to disclose where the money went and how it's being used. He made notes on his pad. We'll also depose the other board members. If they're just rubber stamps for your in-laws' personal expenses, we can demonstrate fraud. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, my in-laws ramped up their PR campaign. Articles appeared in the local society pages about their charitable foundation. Photos of my mother-in-law at fundraisers, looking elegant and selfless. My father-in-law gave an interview about the importance of leaving a legacy beyond material wealth. He's dying and wants to make a difference. One article gushed. Rather than leave his fortune to an ungrateful heir, he's chosen to benefit the community. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went to work, smiled at customers, and came home to help Nora with her homework and read Henry bedtime stories. They had no idea their college fund was evaporating to fight their grandparents in court. 3 weeks before trial, Edmund called. We got the foundation records. And? Your father-in-law pays himself a salary of $180,000 a year as chairman. Your mother-in-law gets $120,000 as executive director. The other board members split another $200,000 in consulting fees. I did the math. That's $500,000 a year going to board members. From an endowment of $8 million, they're draining it dry. Edmund's voice was grim. And that's not all. The foundation has paid for charitable housing of $12,000 a month, which is conveniently the same as the mortgage on their house before they transferred it, plus maintenance, utilities, and a staff of 3. The maid, I said, among others, a groundskeeper and a driver, all paid by the foundation for estate maintenance. He paused. They're also claiming charitable deductions for hosting fundraising events, which seem to include their regular social calendar. Can you use this? I can destroy them with this. I heard the smile in his voice. This isn't a charity. It's a personal piggy bank with tax benefits. Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time in months. So what happens now? Now we file a motion to dismiss based on fraudulent misrepresentation. We also report the foundation to the IRS and the state attorney general. If they're violating nonprofit law, the foundation gets dissolved, and the assets revert to creditors, meaning my father-in-law's medical bills, which his insurance mostly covers anyway. He's not broke. He's not even close to broke. He's just trying to avoid paying his share while forcing you to pay it for him. The courtroom was packed the day of our hearing. My in-laws sat on the opposite side with Patterson and a team of associates. My mother-in-law wore a pale blue suit that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage. She dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for theatrics. Judge Reeves had a reputation for cutting through nonsense. Patterson spoke first, painting a picture of heartbroken parents abandoned by their only child. Your Honor, My clients are elderly, unwell, and facing catastrophic medical expenses. They have no assets, having devoted their fortune to charitable works. Meanwhile, their son lives comfortably, with stable employment and savings, yet refuses to help in their darkest hour. Judge Reeves looked at Edmund. Counsel. Edmund stood. Your Honor, the petitioners are not indigent. They're not even close. What they are is engaged in a sophisticated scheme to avoid their financial obligations while fraudulently claiming poverty. He walked the judge through everything. The asset transfers, the foundation's questionable disbursements, the salaries and benefits, the timing of the will change. He presented bank records showing my father-in-law had deposited $850,000 from the Ferrari sale just 3 months ago. Where did that money go? Judge Reeves asked. Into the Whitmore Family Foundation, Your Honor, a charity that my clients created and control, which pays them generous salaries and provides their housing, transportation, and staff. Patterson shot to his feet. Objection. The foundation is a legally recognized nonprofit entity with legitimate charitable purposes. Sit down, Mr. Patterson. Judge Reeves cut him off. She turned to my father-in-law. Sir, stand up, please. He struggled to his feet, leaning on a cane. He looked frail, but I noticed the cane was the same custom piece he'd carried for years as an affectation, not a necessity. You're claiming you can't afford your own medical care? The judge asked. That's correct, Your Honor. We've given everything to charity. You gave it to a charity you control, where you pay yourself $180,000 a year. That's reasonable compensation for the work involved in... I'm not finished. Her voice could have frozen water. You transferred $8 million in assets to this foundation, which pays you and your wife a combined $300,000 annually, plus housing and expenses. That's not charity. That's a shell game. My mother-in-law stood up. Your Honor, if I may, you may not. Sit down. Judge Reeves flipped through the documents Edmund had filed. I'm looking at an expense report here. The foundation paid $47,000 for a charity gala, held at your residence, with catering from a 5-star restaurant. We were raising funds for... How much did this event raise? The judge asked. Patterson consulted his notes. The event was attended by 50 guests who contributed. I asked how much was raised, not how many people attended. $12,000, Your Honor. Judge Reeves looked at him over her reading glasses. You spent $47,000 to raise $12,000. That's not charity. That's entertaining your friends on a tax deduction. I watched my mother-in-law's face turn scarlet. My father-in-law gripped the table. Here's what's going to happen, Judge Reeves said. I am dismissing this petition with prejudice. The petitioners are not indigent. They have substantial assets. They simply chose to hide them in a fraudulent nonprofit structure. Patterson started to object, but she held up a hand. I'm also referring this matter to the IRS and the State Attorney General for investigation into the Whitmore Family Foundation. If what I'm seeing here is accurate, that foundation is operating in violation of federal nonprofit law. She turned to my in-laws. You came into this court claiming poverty while living in a mansion, paying yourselves 6-figure salaries, and entertaining lavishly. You asked the court to force your son to pay your bills while you control millions of dollars. That's not just dishonest, it's offensive. My father-in-law tried to speak, but Judge Reeves wasn't done. Furthermore, I'm awarding attorney's fees to the defendants. Mr. Patterson, your clients will be responsible for reimbursing the Ashfords for their legal costs in defending against this frivolous suit. She banged her gavel. We're adjourned. I sat in stunned silence as the courtroom emptied. Quentin grabbed my hand, squeezing tight. Edmund was grinning. How much in attorney's fees? I asked. $38,000, he said, plus court costs. You'll get your savings back and then some. Patterson stormed past us without making eye contact. My mother-in-law followed, her face a mask of rage. My father-in-law moved more slowly. For just a moment, his eyes met Quentin's. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. Outside the courthouse, I finally let myself breathe. Is it really over? The lawsuit is, Edmund said. The IRS investigation is just beginning. If they find what I think they'll find, your in-laws are going to face some serious consequences. Good, Quentin said flatly. We drove home in silence. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw our neighbor watering her garden. She waved. Normal life. This was our normal life. And for 3 months, it had been invaded by lawyers and lawsuits and people who'd made it clear we weren't worth knowing. That night, after the kids were asleep, Quentin and I sat on our back porch. The yard needed mowing. The fence needed painting. But it was ours. Do you think they'll actually face consequences? I asked. For the foundation? Maybe. Probably. He was quiet for a moment. Do you think we should have just given them the money? I turned to look at him. Do you? No, God no, but I keep thinking, what if he actually dies because he can't afford the surgery? He can afford it, I reminded him. He has $8 million in a foundation he controls. He's choosing not to use it because he wants us to pay instead. I know, He trailed off. He's still my father. He stopped being your father the day he told you to choose between him and me. Quentin nodded slowly. You're right. I guess I'm grieving something I lost a long time ago. 2 weeks later, Edmund called with an update. The IRS moved fast. They've frozen the foundation's assets pending investigation. Your father-in-law's surgery is scheduled for next month. How's he paying for it? Insurance is covering most of it. Turns out when the foundation's assets were frozen, he suddenly discovered he could afford the copay after all. Funny how that works. I laughed despite myself. What about the house? Still foundation property, but they can't sell it or use foundation funds for maintenance until the investigation is complete. Last I heard, they had to let their staff go. The maid? And the groundskeeper and driver. Your mother-in-law answered the door herself when the investigators came to interview them. I pictured her opening her own door for the first time in decades. I almost feel bad for her. Don't, Edmund said. She made her choices. The IRS investigation took 6 months. In the end, they found exactly what we'd suspected. The Whitmore Family Foundation had been used primarily for personal expenses disguised as charitable works. My in-laws were hit with back taxes, penalties, and fines totaling $2.3 million. The foundation was dissolved. Its remaining assets were distributed to legitimate charities. The house was sold to pay the tax debt. My in-laws moved into a condo, a modest condo. I heard all this through Edmund, who heard it from Patterson's office. We didn't attend any proceedings, didn't gloat, just lived our lives. My father-in-law survived his surgery. According to his social media, he made a full recovery. His posts showed him at physical therapy, taking gentle walks, attending cardiac rehab. Never once did he mention us. Fine by me. A year after the judgment, an envelope arrived in the mail. Inside was a check for $42,000. Our attorney's fees plus court costs. No note, just the check. Should we cash it? I asked Quentin. Absolutely. He took the check and deposited it the same day. This is our money. We earned it by standing up to them. We put half in the kids' college fund. Used the other half to pay off our car and take a vacation to Disney World, our first real vacation in 7 years. Nora and Henry were ecstatic. They had no idea why we could suddenly afford it. They just knew they got to meet Mickey Mouse and ride Space Mountain. On our last day there, as I watched them splash in the hotel pool, Quentin came up behind me. Do you have any regrets? He asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, do you? Not anymore. He wrapped his arms around me. I used to wish I'd grown up in a different family, one that valued people over money, but then I realized I did. I grew up in the family we created. We're not done creating it yet, I said. He kissed the top of my head. No, we're not. 3 years later, the doorbell rang on a Saturday morning. I was making pancakes while Quentin helped Nora with a science project. Henry was watching cartoons in his pajamas. I opened the door to find my mother-in-law standing on our porch. She looked older. Much older than 3 years should account for. Her hair was gray now, not the glossy brown I remembered. She wore a simple dress. No jewelry except a plain watch. Hello, she said quietly. I didn't invite her in. What do you want? To talk? Just for a moment? She glanced past me into the house. I heard voices. Are those my grandchildren? They're my children, I said firmly. You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with them. I was wrong. Her voice cracked. About so many things. Quentin appeared behind me. Mom? She flinched at the word. Hello, Quentin. What are you doing here? Your father passed away last month. The words hung in the air. Quentin's hand found mine, squeezing tight. I'm sorry, I said, because that's what you say, even when you're not sure if you mean it. He never forgave himself, she continued, for what we did, what we lost. You lost it by choice, Quentin said. I know. A tear slid down her cheek. I know, and I have to live with that. I came here because I wanted you to know he died with regrets. So many regrets. That doesn't change anything, I said. No, it doesn't. She pulled an envelope from her purse. This is for you. Your father's life insurance policy. He changed the beneficiary back to you 2 years ago. Quentin took the envelope but didn't open it. Why? Because he was proud of you. He'd never admit it, but he followed your career. Knew you'd been promoted twice. He saw photos of your children on social media. She looked directly at me. He knew you'd graduated summa cum laude while working full-time, that you bought your house without any help, that you built something real. And he never said a word, Quentin said bitterly. Pride is a terrible thing. She twisted her hands together. It keeps you from saying what matters until it's too late. Henry appeared in the doorway. Mommy, who's that? My mother-in-law's breath caught. Oh, he looks just like Quentin did. Go back inside, honey, I said gently. I'll be right there. Henry disappeared, but I knew he was listening just around the corner. Kids always do. I don't expect forgiveness, my mother-in-law said. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that your father saw what you built, and he was wrong about you. She looked at me. You're not beneath anyone's standards. You never were. She turned to leave, then paused. The foundation, the lawsuit, all of it. That was mostly him. I went along with it because that's what I'd always done. But I want you to know I'm ashamed, deeply ashamed. Okay, I said. I didn't know what else to say. I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment now, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She laughed, but it was hollow. Turns out when you spend your whole life not working, you don't have many marketable skills. I'm sorry you're struggling, I said. And I meant it. Sort of. I'm not struggling. I'm living within my means for the first time in my life. She met my eyes. You taught me that. Both of you, even if you didn't mean to. After she left, Quentin and I stood on the porch for a long moment. Should we open it? He asked, holding up the envelope. We sat at the kitchen table while the kids played in the other room. Inside was a letter and a life insurance check for $500,000. The letter was in my father-in-law's handwriting, shaky and weak. Quentin, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I was a coward who couldn't say these things to your face. You were right to choose her. You were right about everything. I watched you build a life with nothing but determination and love, while I hid behind money and pride. You're twice the man I ever was. Your wife is extraordinary. I was too blind to see it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Use this money however you want. But please, if you have any mercy, let your mother meet her grandchildren. She doesn't deserve it. Neither do I. But they deserve to know at least one grandparent before it's too late. Dad, I wiped my eyes. Quentin stared at the letter, his jaw working. What do you want to do? I asked. I don't know. He folded the letter carefully. What do you think? I thought about Nora and Henry, growing up without knowing their father's family. I thought about my mother-in-law working at a dental office, trying to rebuild a life at 65. I thought about cycles of pain and how they could be broken or perpetuated. I think, I said slowly, that we don't have to decide today. We can take our time. Maybe start with a supervised visit. See how it goes. You'd be okay with that? After everything? I'd be okay with trying. For the kids, and maybe for her. if she's really changed. I touched his hand. But the first time she makes you feel bad about yourself, or criticizes our choices, or shows any hint of the person she used to be, she's done. No second chances. Agreed. We put the check in the bank, paid off our mortgage completely, set up college funds for both kids that would cover any school they wanted to attend, put the rest in savings. 2 weeks later, my mother-in-law came for Sunday dinner. She brought a store-bought pie and flowers from the grocery store. Nothing fancy. She sat at our yard sale table and complimented the meal I'd cooked. She asked Nora about school and listened when Henry told her about his soccer team. She didn't stay long, didn't overstep. When she left, she thanked us for the opportunity and said she hoped we'd allow her to visit again. She was nice, Nora said after she'd gone. Yes, she was, I agreed. Is she really our grandmother? She is. Why haven't we met her before? Quentin and I exchanged a glance. It's complicated, he said, but we're working on it. The visits became regular, once a month, then twice. My mother-in-law never mentioned the past unless we brought it up. She didn't bring expensive gifts or try to buy affection. She brought board games and helped with homework and learned to braid Nora's hair. She told us about her job, about the friends she was making at her apartment complex, about the community college classes she was taking to finish the degree she'd abandoned when she married my father-in-law at 22. I never knew who I was without him, she admitted one evening after the kids were in bed. I spent 40 years being someone's wife, playing a role. Now I'm finding out who I actually am. Who are you? I asked. She smiled. I'm still figuring that out, but I think I like her better than the person I was. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were awkward moments and difficult conversations. Times when old patterns would emerge and we'd have to gently but firmly redirect. Times when the kids would ask questions about their grandfather and we'd have to decide how much truth to share. But it was real. Messy and imperfect and real. On Nora's 12th birthday, my mother-in-law gave her a photo album. Inside were pictures of Quentin as a child, photos we'd never seen, his first day of school, his college graduation, pictures of him with his father before things fell apart. I thought you should know where you came from, she told Nora. The good parts. That night, Quentin cried for the first time since his father died. Not for what was lost, but for what we'd found. A family that wasn't perfect but was honest. That made mistakes but learned from them. That valued people over pride. 5 years after that first visit, my mother-in-law graduated with an associate's degree in social work. We all attended her ceremony. She walked across the stage at 68 years old, accepting her diploma with tears streaming down her face. I'm proud of you, Quentin told her afterward. She hugged him tight. I learned from the best. We took a photo that day, all of us together. Quentin and me, Nora and Henry, now teenagers. My mother-in-law in her cap and gown. We looked like any ordinary family celebrating a milestone. Maybe that's what we'd become. Not perfect, not without history, but trying. Always trying to be better than we were yesterday. I keep that photo on my desk at work. When customers ask about it, I tell them it's my family. I don't explain the complicated history or the years of pain. I don't mention the lawsuits or the heartbreak, because that's not what the photo shows. It shows people who chose forgiveness over bitterness, who chose to build something new instead of guarding old wounds, who proved that family isn't just about blood, it's about showing up, making amends, trying again. My father-in-law never got that chance. He died with regrets and apologies written on paper instead of spoken out loud. That's his tragedy to carry, even in death. But my mother-in-law took hers and transformed it. She lost her money, her status, her husband, and the life she'd always known. In return, she gained something more valuable: self-respect, honest relationships, grandchildren who knew her name. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd given them the money for the surgery that first time. If we'd enabled their schemes and perpetuated their dysfunction, we'd be $45,000 poorer. Our kids would be $45,000 further from college, and my in-laws would have learned nothing except that manipulation works. Instead, we drew a line. We said no. We fought back. And in fighting back, we gave my mother-in-law the gift of consequences. The chance to hit bottom and rebuild herself into someone authentic. Someone her grandchildren could actually know and love. Not everyone gets that chance. Not everyone takes it when they do. But she did. And that's made all the difference. Last month, my mother-in-law called to ask if we'd like to have dinner at her apartment. She wanted to cook for us, she said. Show off the kitchen skills she'd been learning from YouTube videos. The apartment was small but clean, decorated with photos of our family and discount store finds. She'd made lasagna from scratch, slightly burnt around the edges but made with love. This is really good, Henry said, going back for seconds. She beamed. Thank you, sweetheart. After dinner, we sat in her tiny living room drinking coffee while the kids played a video game. I have something to tell you, she said. I've been seeing someone. Quentin raised his eyebrows. Oh? His name is Leonard. He's a widower. We met at the community center. She blushed. Actually blushed. It's nothing serious yet, but I wanted you to know. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. He's a retired teacher. Very kind, very patient. She smiled. He thinks it's impressive that I went back to school at my age. He doesn't care that I don't have money or status, because those things don't matter, Quentin said. No, she looked at him. They really don't. It took me 60 years to figure that out, but I finally did. As we drove home that night, Nora said, Grandma seems happy. She does. I agreed. Do you think Grandpa would be proud of her? Quentin thought about it. I think if he could see her now, he'd realize what he missed out on. The real her, not the person she thought she had to be. That's sad, Nora said. Yes, Quentin agreed. It is. But it was also a lesson about the cost of pride, about the prison we build when we care more about appearances than authenticity, about the freedom that comes from losing everything and discovering you're still standing. My mother-in-law lost her mansion, but found herself, lost her husband, but gained her self-respect, lost her old life, but built a new one on honest foundations. And we gained something too, proof that people can change, that it's never too late to choose differently. That family isn't about who you're related to, but who shows up when it matters. On our anniversary this year, Quentin surprised me with a weekend getaway. Just the two of us while my mother-in-law stayed with the kids. Are you sure? I asked. That's a lot of responsibility. She can handle it, he said. And the kids love her. We spent 2 days at a bed and breakfast in wine country. No lawyers, no lawsuits, no drama, just us. On our last night over dinner, Quentin raised his glass. To building something real. I clinked my glass against his. To choosing each other every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We drank to that. To the life we'd built with our own hands. To the savings we'd protected. To the family we'd created. And the one we'd slowly, carefully rebuilt. Because that's what love is, really. Not the fairy tale version with easy answers and perfect families. But the messy, complicated version where you make hard choices and stand by them. Where you draw boundaries and enforce them. Where you fight for what matters and let go of what doesn't. My in-laws tried to trap us with obligation and manipulation, tried to make us pay for their choices while they hid behind charity and victimhood. Instead, we paid for our own choices and discovered they were worth every penny. When we got home, the house was clean, the kids were happy, and my mother-in-law had a photo album ready for us. Pictures she'd taken over the weekend, the kids making cookies, playing board games, building a blanket fort in the living room. They're wonderful children, she said. You've done an amazing job raising them. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. She hugged us both goodbye and drove off in her modest sedan, back to her modest apartment and her modest life. And I realized something. She'd finally figured out what my father-in-law never could. That enough is enough. That happiness doesn't come from having more, but from appreciating what you have. We'd fought so hard to protect our $45,000 in savings. In the end, we got it back plus $500,000 more. But the real victory wasn't the money. It was proving that we couldn't be bought, manipulated, or controlled. That our family was built on something stronger than obligation or inheritance. It was built on choice. Every single day we choose each other, choose honesty over appearances, choose substance over status. My in-laws chose the opposite and it cost them everything. But in losing everything, my mother-in-law found what matters. Better late than never. I think about that sometimes. When I'm at work serving customers who don't see me. When I'm tired from the double shifts and the endless bills. When I look at our modest house and secondhand furniture. I could have married someone else. Someone whose family would have welcomed me with open arms and an open checkbook. Someone who would have made life easier. But I chose Quentin. Chose the man who chose me over his inheritance. Who walked away from his family's money and never looked back. And he chose me. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, he chooses me. That's worth more than any trust fund, more than any mansion or vintage car collection, more than any amount of money his parents could have left him. We built our life together brick by brick, saved our money penny by penny, raised our children with love and honesty, and the knowledge that family isn't about what you have. It's about who you are. My in-laws demanded we pay for their medical expenses after disowning us for 5 years. They sued us for elder support while hiding millions in a fake charity. They tried to make us feel obligated to fund their lifestyle while they refused to acknowledge their own grandchildren. And we said no. That simple word, backed up by lawyers and evidence and sheer determination, changed everything. It gave my mother-in-law the wake-up call she needed. It showed our children that you don't have to accept mistreatment just because it comes from family. It proved that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable for their choices. My father-in-law died with regrets. But those regrets were his to carry. We didn't cause them by refusing to enable his schemes. He caused them by choosing pride over relationship, money over family, appearances over authenticity. That's his legacy. A cautionary tale about the cost of caring more about what others think than about the people who matter most. My legacy, our legacy, it's sitting at the kitchen table right now. Nora doing her homework, Henry building something with Legos, Quentin helping them both while dinner simmers on the stove. It's the modest house we bought with money we earned, the college funds we protected and grew, the example we set by standing up for ourselves. It's also the relationship we rebuilt with my mother-in-law, slowly, carefully, with firm boundaries and honest communication, teaching our kids that people can change, but that change has to be real and sustained to matter. That's not a legacy you can leave in a will or hide in a foundation. It's a legacy you live every single day, and it's worth everything.